Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our MASSP webinar, From Policy to Practice, a phone-free journey with our friends from Yondr. Excited to hear from them and all of the different school leaders that are going to be sharing their journey and their best practices on how they are dealing with student devices and phones. And so excited to have you all on this webinar. We are scheduled to be here for about an hour or so. But we're going to give you about another minute or so to get settled in as we are waiting for people to join. While you come in, if you are willing and able, please go ahead and open up the chat, introduce yourself, give your name, school, role, and maybe one hope or one question that you have related to today's session. Just a quick note in the chat, you want to make sure that you have it set to everyone. Otherwise, your comment will only go to myself and the panelists. So again, as you are coming in on today's webinar, please introduce yourself. Feel free to share something you're hoping to get out of today's presentation. And again, make sure that is set to everyone. See a few people coming in. Becky and Nick, thank you for doing that. And Jennifer, glad to have you guys with us today. Christopher, thanks for doing that. And while, again, people are coming into the webinar, introducing themselves in the chat, just a couple of items before we get started. So this is a webinar. I'm sure everyone's used to this on Zoom. You have a couple options available to engage with your guest panelists today. Number one is to use the Q&A really for questions. And in the Q&A, you will have the opportunity to even upvote. So if somebody else has that a similar question, you can hit the little thumbs up button, and that'll kind of help guide us in terms of processing questions as they are coming in. So please use the Q&A to do that. The chat, which I'm having you use right now to introduce yourself, is really for just adding ideas or a comment. So please try not to put a question in the chat. It's just easier for all of the panelists and guests to track them if they're all in one spot. So sharing ideas in the chat, questions go to the Q&A. And we will send a copy of this slide deck as well as a recording. We will email that to you all over the next couple of business days. We'll also probably have some follow-up items mentioned in MASSP publications over the next week or two. And then this is just a quick disclaimer we throw on. Usually this has to do more with like legal webinars that we run, but it is just a good reminder because you will be able to access this recording at a later date and time. Just remember the information is accurate up through today, which is October 20th. So if you're looking back at this in a month from now or a year from now, I think a lot of the practices they're going to be sharing are going to still be relevant, but some little pieces might change. So just make sure that you're always being mindful of what day you are accessing this information. Otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to our friends from Yondr, and they have a team here that they're going to introduce, as well as some of the guests they are bringing in from some of our own Michigan schools to share their phone journey. So I'm going to stop talking and presenting, and I'm going to turn it over to Courtney and company.
All right, and now I'm going to share my screen and we can kind of dive right in from here. I know Courtney's going to start us off, but I'll pass it over to her.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ryan and Jillian, for that introduction. We're so excited to be here and just share more about the phone-free movement that's really happening across the country and in Michigan. So first, we'll do a little introductions in terms of our team. So Jillian, if you could hit the next slide. First off, my name is Courtney. I live on the west side of Michigan in the Grand Rapids area. I help support schools and districts across the state, and then I'll have my colleagues also introduce themselves as well. So Jillian, why don't you go next?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jillian Baumgartner. I'm one of the other team members here at Yondr, helping support schools in Michigan. And I live in the Metro Detroit area. So to be even more specific, I'm in Ferndale, and I'll pass it over to Nina.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Nina England. I am the Michigan Partner Success Manager. I'm local today and tomorrow. I'm actually coming to you out of Southgate, Michigan. So excited to be here. I am based in Minnesota, but work with all of our states in the central region. And I'll pass it over to Patrick.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Patrick Fisher. I'm the Senior Director for U.S. Public Affairs over at Yondr. So I'm helping the company keep an eye on all the legislation and funding that's taking place across the country when it comes to phone-free schools. I'm based just outside Philadelphia, so happy to be a part of the Michigan team today.
Awesome. And I wanted to also give a shout out to our incredible school partners here today. They've taken time out of their busy schedule and even fall break to share what it's like been to creating a phone-free learning environment. So we'll actually have them introduce themselves at a later time in the session when they deep dive into their experiences, but we really appreciate all of them being here today. So today we're really just going to dive into how did we even get here? What are the steps Michigan is currently taking, and how could you even help enhance your current policy? Then we'll hear from our amazing partners about their experiences. Feel free to ask them any questions either in the chat or afterwards. We will have some time at the end for questions, but again, I forget what I'm thinking about, so feel free to put them in the chat. We'll definitely address them throughout. So, how did we get here? If you think back to 2007, when Steve Jobs really unveiled the iPhone, when he unveiled it, he said it's going to be three devices in one. It's going to save time. It's going to be this amazing thing with iPod and MP3 player, a portable telephone, and internet all in one. But man, has that spiraled into something that I don't even know if Steve Jobs would envision this becoming. But even a few years after that, in 2010, we were all in the bring your own device era, right? Where kids brought their own devices because they were an asset to really help further their education and build the 21st century learners we know today. But somewhere in the 2000 teens, we really saw that unexpected shift as social media started emerging and really started utilizing this variable ratio reinforcement schedule, which you might say, I have enough acronyms to learn and phrases in education. What does that mean? Basically, in psychology, it essentially means the science behind slot machines. Every one of those social media companies has programmers that are well versed in how to keep you coming back for more with those quick dopamine hits, right? And as they become more effective, we realize our time is going more and more and more into social media for everything, on top of kids doing this on as well, which really was all enhanced by the pandemic. And as a former educator who taught during that time, we all remember that trying to corral those children on virtual screens, tell them where to go, where they need to be, was quite chaotic and very much a comedy show at best. But it also created this situation where mental health was really starting to decline because kids were spending all of their time by themselves or on a device for most of the school day. So as we came back to school, and Jillian, if you want to hit the next slide, as we came back to school, educators were now teaching in a new, unfamiliar environment. This was actually shared during a leadership forum in Missouri, where this teacher decided she was just really fed up with the cell phones, technology, and all of that, and conducted a personal study within her classroom. For one class period, she tracked how many notifications her students were getting. She just really couldn't compete with it and thought she'd put a number to it. So she had them track what apps they were on and use and stated every time you get a notification, I want you to walk up to this chart paper and put a tally. At the end of the class period, they were just going to see how many notifications they had as a class today. And in one class period, there were 1,313 notifications that came through. And remind you, this was just one class period out of that entire high school and entire country, right? But we actually partner with Common Sense Media, and they found that 50% of students are actually receiving upwards of 230 to 450 notifications per day. And 25 to 50% of those occur during the school hours. And as we age, as adults, we're constantly being distracted just like kids are. And I'm not sure if you've ever taken like a gander at your screen time, but when you have a moment or even now, check your screen time. It really, when I did it, it really helped me realize how much that was really constantly in my life, and I made a good change. But if you have time now or not, feel free, if you're brave enough, put your number in the chat. I think my average was 5 hours per day, and that's pretty sad when you think about the workday and everything. So really being cognizant of what that looks like. And then if we think about the distractions that come, it also impacts students, like we said, throughout the day. And as we've seen in headlines, students are facing social, psychological, and academic crisis right now if something isn't done. And we know that kids' brains are still developing, and you're trying to create that environment that really fosters that growth, where studies have shown that it takes an average of 20 minutes for students to get back on track from those cellular distractions. So now think about that number from the previous slide. Plus, if children or students have at least 3 hours or more of social media use, the anxiety, the depression symptoms rise exponentially. And then this brings me to, what is the world doing? What is Michigan doing? So I'm actually going to hand it over to Patrick, who's going to talk more about the conversations he's been having.
Thanks, Courtney. You can go ahead and advance, Jillian. I always like a good map to capture an image. And when you think about the story that Courtney just told, wrapping through the 2010s, post-pandemic, I think many people, including policymakers, started to realize that this issue was not going away. Clearly, Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, put a fine point on it. It's something that we here at Yondr have known about because we've been doing this work for over 10 years. But in the last 24 months, you've seen a real groundswell of support for policies at the state level to regulate cell phones in schools. So as you look at this map, every state that's in green has either passed legislation or issued an executive order that is restricting the use of cell phones in schools at some level. The states that are in white haven't done anything yet. And then the states that are in kind of that beige yellow, they are all actively considering legislation at some level. So what the map tells you is there is just clear momentum to do something about this at the state level across the country. That includes in Michigan. Those of you who maybe followed the news over the summer know that there have been several attempts to get legislation across the finish line in Michigan. The most recent attempt occurred in the summer. There was a vote. The legislation did not pass. But my understanding is it had more to do with kind of Michigan politics than it did with the actual policy itself. And given the momentum across the country, given the conversations we've had with lawmakers, including the governor's office, people in the Senate, people in the Michigan House, about where this issue is headed. When it comes to Michigan, it's a question of when the policymakers and lawmakers do something, not a question of if they're going to do something. There's really that type of incentive and desire to create some sort of regulation. We can get into some of the nuance of those pieces of legislation in the question and answer if you want. When we talk about bell to bell versus instructional time only, there's lots of nuance. But the big picture takeaway is this is happening across the country, and it is very likely to happen in Michigan in the near future. So Julian, you can go ahead and advance. One signal about what direction Michigan is headed was included in the most recent budget that was just passed at the very end of September after, I know, a very long process. So this is the headline from October 7th. And what I wanted to highlight is within this year's budget, there is funding that's set aside for student mental health and school safety needs. For the budget wonks who are on the call, in the budget, this is line 31AA. And in this most recent budget, what was notable is everyone agreed to include specific language that makes phone-free school solutions an eligible expense for this line item. So every district receives an allotment of student mental health and school safety funds, and those districts are now allowed to use those funds to support phone-free school solutions. So we can, again, get into more of the details in the question and answer, but those are the two big picture takeaways I wanted to highlight. One, very likely legislation is coming. Two, the state has identified a funding source for schools that want to go phone-free.
Perfect. And now we're going to talk a little bit about who Yondr is. You can hear just from what we've been sharing and the research that Courtney shared and the following of the legislation that Patrick shared, our team is very passionate about these phone-free spaces. And that's really because we've been kind of the leaders of this phone-free movement. We've been doing this for the past 11 years, and we've really worked with every different type of school. So we're working with schools in all 50 states across the United States, as well as we have school partners in 35 countries internationally. So we even hear overseas that more and more schools are going and taking this phone-free movement within their students. And so we've really learned a lot of best practices along the way and have really developed our Yondr program. And so here you can kind of see a brief outline of what the Yondr program is. And I'm not going to dive too deep into it, but we would love to connect with you guys at a different time too to talk about how this would specifically work in your school environment if that's something that you're interested in. But basically it comes down to 3 different components. So we have our phone-free equipment. So we have our lockable pouch as well as our unlocking bases that really ensure that students have that highest level of compliance when it comes to really working with your phone policy. We also have different storage mechanisms, different equipment to just make sure that you're fully equipped for introducing a program like Yondr. We also have a lot of training and support. So people like Nina, for example, on our partner success team really come alongside you guys in helping you guys create that phone-free environment for your students. So what that looks like is it's going to be help with your policy, talking about, consequences for if you're not complying with the policy, talking about the stakeholder communication as well. So we have tools and PowerPoint decks and parent night letters so that your parents, your staff, and your students are well versed in what this new phone policy is going to look like and what the expectations of them are as well, in ensuring that you're creating that phone-free environment. And then we also have some curriculum resources. So what this is really looking like right now is we have our Yondr Hub. And this has a few short videos to kind of help your students learn a little bit about the digital detox that they would go through in a phone-free environment. And there's also just different resources that you can share with parents and staff members as well. So if you had a parent who is interested in maybe reducing that phone time for students at home, there's some resources that we've partnered with Common Sense Media to really kind of equip parents to do that type of thing. So like I said, that is the very short and brief version of the Yondr program. We really want to work with you, and we can tailor it to your school environment because we've had experience working with schools of every different size and type. And some of the impacts that a lot of our partners hear, we're about to hear from our partners firsthand, but this is a survey that we have sent out to our partners to just kind of hear the feedback of a program like Yondr and what they saw. So 86% of our partners were seeing a positive impact on safety and wellness. So we know that mental health is really tied to that phone-free environment, and most of our school partners noticed that pretty quickly. Also, 84% of our partners were seeing that positive change in student engagement as well. So this is not only engagement in the classroom, because of course we want them to be at school learning, and that is really important, but we're also seeing student engagement with one another. They're having more conversations in the lunchroom and the hall rooms. They're just more engaged in general. And I know Sarah from Fulton is going to share some stories about the engagement from her students as well that she's seen. And then 68% of our partners also saw an improvement in academic performance. Once again, if they're going to be engaged in the classroom, chances are they're going to be more engaged in what's being shared with them. And so that really results in that academic performance. At the bottom line, the most important thing to know about Yondr is that with Yondr, it's a partnership. We're here to help you. We're here to share best practices that we've learned over the years. And we're here to really make sure that that phone-free environment is going to work with your school community and that you feel prepared to implement something like that. And now we're going to kind of turn it over to some of our school partners, and I'll let them introduce themselves, and then they can just kind of walk through some of the questions and answers that are on the slide and share anything about kind of their journey with going phone free. So first we have Sarah, and Sarah is from Fulton Middle School and High School. And I'll turn it over to you, Sarah, if you want to kind of share your journey for getting to where you guys are today with the Yondr program.
Thanks, Jillian. So my building is a 612 building, and we had a policy where phones were to be undetectable. So they shouldn't be seen or heard, but students were able to use them before school, after school, during lunch, during passing time. And that was not really working. Mostly things like kids sneaking them, obviously, staff inconsistencies, different staff allowing students to have phones at different times. And we started looking at different solutions and the impact of phones on kids. For me, not only as a parent, but as someone in a building, I definitely wanted to try to find a solution that would mitigate some of the parents' safety concerns about not being able to reach their student in an emergency. And so this provided us a great option that created consistency across our building. We started with our middle school. We rolled this out last January to the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders in our building. Did a lot of education. The counselor and I met with every middle school class in December before Christmas break. Lots of communication out to parents and focusing on your student could have their phone on them. And in an emergency, they would be able to access it should something ever happen, heaven forbid. We don't make it public knowledge, but we could very easily take a pair of scissors and cut their pouch open if there was ever a true emergency. We also have a plan to make sure that our keys make it to our safety points. So we rolled this out in January. It was a little bit of a rough start. It definitely took a lot of time from teachers checking to make sure phones were off before they were secured, to a fair number of calls home, verifying whether kids had phones or not, and just kids not doing what they were supposed to. But this fall, when we came back, huge change with our middle school. Like the kids knew what to expect. Not a whole lot of issues with kids not following policy. So last year we had kids securing their phones in first hour. So their first hour teacher would check to make sure their phone was powered off before they secured it. We were giving them last year access to their phone during lunch, and that was our attempt to get buy-in from the students. So we would unlock them and then re-secure them at lunch. It wasn't great. It was fairly time consuming, but I definitely think it got the buy-in from the kids and families. And again, this is just the middle school half of our building. But this year, we made the decision as a staff that they weren't going to get them at lunch either. We felt like we had a pretty good handle on the procedures and the systems. So our kids do not have access to their phone in the middle school from the beginning of first hour to the end of last hour. Most of the kids don't even carry their phones with them anymore. A lot of kids were walking around with their pouches last year, like their little security blanket. We don't see that near as much now. Our students leave their pouches in their last hour class. Some of them put them in their lockers, but we've given each teacher a bin to keep them in. We have found with stuff goes home, Chromebooks, chargers, it sometimes doesn't make it back. We do have some loaner pouches in the office. If student doesn't have theirs, their phone just comes to the office. Last year, we used the label spot on the front and we put each student's name in there. What we found was that kids were taking each other's. We had one student in particular, I think they ended up with going through 3 or 4 of other people's. So this year we actually labeled the inside of them with a number, much like you would label a textbook. And that has made it much easier for us to keep track of who and what has different ones. Something that we learned pretty early on was to spent some time practicing closing theirs because we had some damage when kids would just try to slam them shut. And so that was a little bit of an issue for us. Last year, first semester, we had 127 cell phone violations. When we rolled this out in our middle school, second semester, we reduced that to 43 cell phone violations. Those are in classroom and office combined. And so far through Q1, we have had 20 cell phone violations this year. The biggest thing that my staff has noticed is during assemblies, because our assemblies are building wide, so 612, it is very clear which students are middle school students and which students are high school students. Our high school students are very much face and phone or even recording, which isn't necessarily an issue for some of the assemblies we've had. But our middle school students are way more engaged in any assemblies or pep rallies that we have than our high school students. To the point that I have most of my staff on board with rolling this out at the high school. So we are kind of in a waiting period to see how our school budget shakes out. And we have the board and the superintendent and the staff interested in rolling this out to our high school. Any questions?
Can I ask a question, Sarah?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I've heard this, especially from our middle school members at MASSP over the last year or two, seeing more and more go to that model where they do not have access to a device during lunchtime, and just the change in what the lunchroom looks like, sounds like, for good reasons, right? Kids are conversing. Someone went out and they're buying games, board games to play during lunch, and just seeing like that sort of environment again. Have you noticed that as well? Or no?
So I don't have anything like concrete necessarily.
Yeah.
We open our gym at lunch, and when we first rolled this out, when they had access, definitely there were more kids like sitting on their phones during that short period of time. Again, we made that choice to try to get the buy-in. And now we have a few kids that are playing games on their Chromebooks during lunch. But for the most part, our kids are engaged in the gym and they really like that time. So anecdotally, I would say, yes, we've seen a bit of a change for sure. There's definitely been less middle school cell phone drama that has almost completely come to a halt. So-and-so sent a Snapchat of me last night or second hour, whatever the case may be.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks so much, Sarah. And we're going to have time for questions at the end, and all of our partners will be able to share from their experiences as well. So if you have a question, don't worry, we'll still get to it. And now we're going to hear from one of our newer implementations over at Dearborn Heights. So we have Mark and Aaron. And if you guys kind of want to share your story of how you guys came to Yondr, what you were doing before, and some of the impacts that you're already seeing, that would be great. I'll turn it over to Mark and Aaron now.
Okay. I'll jump in, Aaron, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Dearborn Heights School District number 7 is a urban school district on right next to Dearborn Public Schools. We're a smaller school district, about 2,300 students. We're in the process of making a lot of changes here in the school district, and I think that the Yondr implementation certainly is a big one. We had a number of our high school staff members, as well as our high school principal, Mr. Millette, come to a policy committee meeting, and they'd asked to get on an agenda, and they came and spoke about how their role pretty much in school basically is being the cell phone police. So it was eye-opening, at least for me, and the way that cell phones truly impact the teaching and learning, as well as all of the things that the teachers were doing to, we use the crates, we use the area where they could charge their cell phones, but these phones are going off all over the place. So we are a Neola policy district. So we changed 2 of our policies, 5136, personal communication devices, and the 7530.02 staff communication devices. We changed them at that meeting. We did 2 readings. This, by the way, happened over the summer. And with about 3 or 4 weeks left before school started, we needed to make a decision about implementation of this policy. And basically, the board developed a policy for students K-12, no cell phones at any time during the day. And then for staff, they have to use their cell phones. They can keep their cell phones, but they're to use it for school business and be mindful if they do have issues that they use it at a time, like if there's a home issue that comes up, they use it as a time that they're not sitting in front of students. So we didn't ban them from staff members, but we call it professional use for their cell phones and being mindful that none of the students will have them. So we went to implementation. We made some phone calls. We had one of our administrators that met the Yondr folks a couple of years ago or a year or so ago. So that kind of started the process, reached out, brought the folks in. They did a great job. The funding for our program is through our Title IV. We worked with our state consultant, and she approved that expenditure. And so we bought pouches for all the high school and the middle school students. They take them home, bring them back, and then the elementary, we use they keep them at the school, and especially for our 4th and 5th graders. We don't have a lot that use them, but we do have the classroom pouches that are on the wall, so that our elementary students do not take them home. So that's the process of implementation. It was a whirlwind. We did it in about 6 weeks, pulled it off, basically to notify the parents. We did newsletters, sent out the Yondr information, sent out the videos. And it's been, I think overall, it's been a really solid implementation. And part of that is, through the help of Jillian and Nina and their team and getting us ready for this. So that's kind of where we're at. I'll turn it over to Aaron.
Thank you. So with us, it's wait for the day. So when they come in, we have 4 unlocking stations and 2 or 4 outside as well, so they can unlock and put their phones away. And we have security and assistant principal that checks or reminds them throughout the day or in the mornings to put them away. Honestly, the big thing for us is a veteran teacher's probably been here 40 years. Said, when I say it's time to get moving, we get moving. The kids aren't buried in their phones and, not paying attention. So that's been awesome. The question about lunch from Ryan, it's loud, but it's a good loud. The kids are actually engaged, and sometimes it's kind of funny watching some elementary behavior with the high schoolers, but it's a good energy. Uno has been big. They bring the small cards, big cards, all that stuff. The only thing is, if they haven't won yet, they want to take it on to their next class. And so sometimes the teacher has to kind of say that, you check that at the door. Kids do try to scam the system a bit. They'll put a burner phone in there or whatever. The other school, they're better than we are. Our first month, we had like 109 kids trying to test the limits and not put their phones away, or they get caught with whatever. But we put everything away with the earbuds, phones, watches. So that could be any of the 3 that they get caught with. First time's just a conversation. Second time a parent comes in, I'd say 99% of the time, it's a good conversation when the parent comes in. Even yesterday, a mom came in. I'm like, yeah, we get to meet. I've never met you before. So it's a good time to sit down and talk. And again, it's positive. Even one of my most challenging over the years, I was a middle school principal for 5 years, and this is my 4th year as a high school principal. So this young man and I have been together for since 6th grade. And so the parent and I had some battles, but she rolled down the window one day, thought it was going to be negative, and she's like, I love the pouches. Good job. So it's very cool to see. What else was there? Honestly, with the somebody said something about anxiety and getting the parent buy-in. I have maybe a couple parents. One, the family member's on a transplant list, and so they were really hesitant about not being able to get a hold of their kid. And so we just preface that with that's a lot to carry. We had a long conversation at the end. I kind of just gave in and said, here's my cell phone number. If you really, I'll get your kid within 20 minutes. And so that eased that. A couple kids with anxiety. we gave the medical pouches to, and that's really helped with them. We always tell the kids that the door's open. My unlocking device is right on the desk. If they want to come down and chat with their family real quick, have at it. And I was dealing with some of that when at the beginning, parents will email and say, will you tell so-and-so there's money in their account because they can't text them anymore. And so I just make a list, and during passing time or at lunch, I catch them and say, mommy message me, you have money in your account. So it's good. It's cool. It's all been good. Yeah, I can't complain too much about it at all. If we could, the pins, like the other school talked about, the schooling them how to do it the right way. I think you could do that, and then the kids still try to beat the system, and so if that pin gets bent a little bit, that it kind of makes it more difficult for them to get their phone out, and that's on them. So, but overall, I'd say 99% has been great. So that's it for me.
Very good, Aaron. I would just add a couple of things, and I was really concerned about community pushback and those types of issues, and there really has not been any. And I truly believe that's because when you make it crystal clear that the focus for schools is teaching and learning, and the negative impact that phones were having on our core process, that's why schools exist, for teaching and learning. I think that sends a pretty strong message to the parents and to the community that, that's what it is we're about, and that's what we're focused on. And if there's something out there that is impacting that negatively, then we need to move on that. I also would, our building administrators, middle school, high school, elementary, they really jumped into this. They were very positive about it. They worked with their parents. I know Aaron's had a couple of parents that he's really worked with. I truly believe a successful implementation is in part because of the work that our building principals did, and working with their parents and their families and their students. The other thing was the actual rollout, and we gave buildings flexibility based on where they were at and with their staff on how to roll it out. We didn't just do by this date you have to do this, and they took different paths, and I thought that was really cool. The middle school decided to jump in day one, start a school, and implement and roll. And the high school wanted time for their teachers to work with their students and really talk to them and kind of get them to understand why it is we're doing it. So I think a little bit of that flexibility was very helpful for implementation. And then one final thing, and I'll be quiet. The other day I was at at the high school, and I walked by and I asked the teacher, how's it going? And the teacher said to me that the vibe, as they use, young teacher, the vibe in his classroom and in the entire school is totally changed. Totally changed. So to a positive, kids are engaging, like you guys have heard. They're talking to each other. They're focusing on what's going on in the classroom. So kudos to Yondr for helping us get to this point, and we're gonna continue with it and build from there. So thank you.
And so I just got an email while we're talking. So the person who kind of does our IT stuff, she says that I have a massive decrease in notifications and inappropriate websites. So many Spotify, YouTube. So that impact I didn't even think of until just now. So they're actually paying attention, not Googling things, and they still they're one-to-one with Chromebooks, but they're not doing those things. And then two, like there's drama happening somewhere. Like boys are gathering around, like there might be a fight or whatever. So I start walking with a purpose, and honestly, nobody started following. Before, everybody followed with their phone up in the air, like trying to record. Nothing. I walked down there, got the two boys. We walked back to the office, all three of us together. Nobody had any idea because it wasn't shared anywhere. There was no Snapchat or whatever else, going on. And so it was done in 3 minutes, and instead of putting out that fire all day or 2 days. So thank you.
You must have read my mind, Aaron. I was just going to ask you if you've seen like either an increase or decrease on the school then issued devices, right? And I guess Sarah too. That I was just curious about that, knowing that I can't do this thing I always want to do. So then they try and push the limits on their school device. But it sounds like you're not seeing that, or maybe that's not the case.
No, I think the emails between kids have increased because they can't text each other. But now they know everything's logged and flagged.
Monitored, right?
Yeah. So as soon as something comes up, then that's a 2-second conversation. Come on now. 60 emails to your BFF in 1 hour. That's too much. So.
Thank you guys so much. And like I said, just the same with Sarah, Mark and Aaron will be here to help answer questions too if there is anything as well. But now we're going to turn it over to Avondale with Katie and Aaron. They have been some of our longtime implementers, and so we are really excited for them to share a little bit about what it looks like when you're a couple years into this program as well. And I also have to give a big thank you to them because they're taking time out of their fall break to share this story with us. So thank you to you both, and I'll turn it over to you guys.
Good morning. So Erin actually has a great story, but she said her dog was barking, so I don't know.
She stopped. We're good.
So Erin can share the implementation story of how we got started using Yondr. So go ahead with that, Erin.
So one day I was walking down the 6th grade hall, and the 6th grade teacher was teaching a lesson on argument writing. And I happened to walk by, and she invited me in for the conversation, and it was about should schools be phone free. And so we're in there talking. Kids are sharing an article that they read that talked about Yondr being used in a school somewhere across the country. We started chatting, and in all honesty, I was the only one that was saying at the time that I would love for schools to be phone free. And we talked about the why behind it. And then we kind of finished our conversation, and I went back to Katie's office and I said, we have to look and see what this Yondr is all about. And that kind of started our story along this path. And we've implemented it for 3 years now. So our entire middle school, this is the only thing that they know. Katie, I'm going to let you finish so I can take care of the dog.
Yeah, so our code of conduct before was that phones were supposed to be off and in their lockers. But we obviously, teachers, same as other people said, we had the phone police. Teachers were spending an inordinate amount of time dealing with phone issues. We did have some data in 2020. So before implementation, the first semester we had 124 phone violations in semester 1, which was after teachers gave a warning. So kids were allowed, teachers would give a warning and have kids put it away, and then they would get a violation after the warning. So 124 was nothing compared to the amount of interactions teachers were having with kids about phones. After implementation, we had 61. And now we have I don't know, I think we have maybe 2 a week, 1 a week. And that's where we find a kid who doesn't have their phone in their pouch. So Aaron and I stand at the door. We have a single entrance, so we have a secure entrance that comes into our building. I stand at one door, Aaron stands at the other door. We greet every kid. We have them show us their pouch in the morning with the phone locked in it. Aaron has a list of kids that don't have cell phones, so she knows who doesn't have a phone. So we've actually found that now we have a group of 8th graders whose parents were wait till 8th students, so they never had cell phones through school. And now we've found that tons of our 6th graders don't have phones. It's less of a pressure on families at this point. We did have some questions with parents. We rolled out before school started, when we were first implementing, and we still do it every single year, sort of acclimating parents. We do a parent orientation before middle school starts in the summertime. And we rolled out the Yondr, but we started rolling it out in January before we were going to implement it in the fall. And we had a lot of questions about safety. And one of the things that we kind of expressed to parents was that if your child is sick, Like we don't want them calling you from a bathroom in our building. We have 8 bathrooms. Like I don't know where they are or what, we want them in the clinic to call home. So like if they're sick, they need to call home from the clinic so that an adult can make sure they're okay. If they're being picked on or, parents like the word bullied, right? We don't want them calling their parent from a bathroom and the parent is coming up to the building frustrated or hot, angry, because their kid is upset and we don't even know where the kid is or we don't even have the opportunity. So we explain to parents that like we will handle those situations. You don't have to leave your job and come up here from work to the school to address those issues. We'll do it, but we need them to come to the office with those concerns. So that's helped a lot. We don't make the kids turn their phones off. So a lot of kids leave it in like they just put it on silent and put it in their pouch. Um, so that one of the things that we explained to parents was that if it's on silent and in the pouch, parents can still track their kids. So they're really worried about we're very close to Oxford. So parents are obviously were really impacted by what happened in Oxford. So that parents can use Life 360 or Find My to track their kid if the pouch is on them. We also do share that all of our grab bags or our emergency bags have sharp scissors in them so that if we had to evacuate the building, students would be able to open their Yondr pouch with scissors. Some parents even put scissors in kids' like pencil pouches so that kids could cut open their Yondrs if they needed to in an emergency. And we're just kind of clear about what is an emergency. Like, needing lunch money is not an emergency. Riding your friend's bus home is not an emergency. We're talking about like the kind of emergency where we're outside of the building and you need to have your parent meet you at a rendezvous point.
We've also given the direction that you can always come to the office to make a phone call home. And kids have utilized that and they've been really good about utilizing it for good reason. I can't find my lunch money, or I forgot to tell my mom that we have to, that our game is away. And so they come down and they use it. Part of that, we've also included some training on how you greet people and how you interact with office staff. And that's been really beautiful to see, like kids coming in and saying, good morning, Miss Benson. I forgot my lunch money. Can I use the phone? And that has been really exciting for us.
Some other stuff. One of our superintendents came into the building one time. And the kids, we have about 600 kids in our building, and they gather in the commons in the morning. So after they come in through the single entrance, they stand in the commons before we sort of release them into the rest of the building. And the superintendent came in and she said, "Wow, it's so loud in here." And we said, "Yeah, that's what it sounds like when kids are talking to each other, right? Like they aren't just like sitting on their phones, like just like." Vegging out. So we've just seen such an increase in engagement. Our test scores have skyrocketed. Our building has done a complete turnaround. Some other facts or statistics. The first semester before we implemented Yondr pouches, we had 22 fights. The semester after we were down to 7. So I mean it's just like huge the change. We had 2,285 referrals that semester 1 of the year before we implemented, and we were down to 925. So cut in half. And that includes things like tardies and like little itsy bitsy stuff, but just really a huge reduction in discipline stuff. Again, the drama's down, like other schools have indicated. One of the hardest days of our week is a Monday when kids are on their phones all weekend and they're able to talk smack to each other over the weekend on their phones, and we have to unlock pouches and get them out. Sort of on the meat and potato side, we have Yondr unlockers posted in the hallways that screw in and screw out. So we have somebody who does that and then unscrews them in the after or puts them in the afternoon and then unscrews them after students have cleared out of the building. We have the handhelds on our carts in the morning where we greet kids so kids can unlock their pouches. We do ask kids to keep them locked overnight with the phones out of them, obviously, but that protects the pin Otherwise they get bent if they shove them like in their backpack. We do have an extra outside unlocker that we leave up outside of our building that kids can access, like if they forget to unlock their pouch. And as far as discipline goes, if students are found without their phone in the pouch, the phone is automatically parent pickup. So we confiscate the phone and it's parent pickup, which is inconvenient for kids and parents. We do have several parents who have said, "Hey, just keep it till next Tuesday," or like just keep it. I don't need it, So and if the student is using the phone, then the student gets ISS, so in-school suspension, and it's parent pickup. So like for example, if it's like an incidental find where it falls out of a kid's backpack or something like that, then it's just confiscated and parent pickup. But if the kid is like videoing or talking on the phone or texting, then we do give. So we have a pretty big stick, pretty big consequences, and the students know those consequences.
And that's changed through the course of our implementation. With us being 3 years in, then the whole student body knows our policy. That was new for this year.
So it wasn't as heavy before, as kids were getting used to it, but now that the kids don't know anything else, we kind of carry a big stick. The other thing is that teachers will say like, well, the kids know how to jailbreak them, they know how to break them open, and we're like, that's a choice. Like they know what the consequences are. Or sometimes parents say, well, some of these kids aren't using their pouch, they're just hiding their phone somewhere and sneaking it in. And I said, well, okay, like if we don't ever see it and they don't get in trouble for it, then we still win, right? Like they're still not using their phone throughout the day. So like we win. But if a kid does get caught with a phone, they do go on our list of students that get searched in the morning. So if they do try to sneak around the system, we do have students that come through, like I said, the single entry. We also have a weapons detection system. So we have security that's checking kids. So they go on the list to be checked if they have snuck their phone in because they've lost our trust that they're going to do what they're supposed to do. So I think that's most of the things. We've loved working with Yondr. Nina's been great. I think probably we met some of you at MASSP when we were there, MASSP, one of those, because we've talked about Yondr and collaborated with a lot of districts in the area. So it's been great. That's all we have.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. And we're going to turn it over to questions in just a second. So start thinking about those if you have any questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen just because Brian was curious of what all the equipment looked like. So I'm going to show really quickly, just in case anyone hasn't seen the Yondr equipment before. That way you can kind of be familiar with some of the pieces that people are talking about. So this is our standard Yondr pouch where students are putting their cell phones in it. And this is the pin mechanism that people were talking about. So they just push the screen button in and that locks the Yondr pouch for students. And then we have a couple of different unlocking bases really quickly. So we have a lockbox. That was the one that Katie was talking about, is outside of the building. It's weatherproof. We know that's really important here in Michigan. So you can have this up and put your own locking key on it when students should be accessing it. We also have the handheld unlocking base that Katie was mentioning is on their carts. Really good for administrators to have because it's very mobile. And then the last type of unlocking base that they just mentioned was our round unlocking base, where the actual unlocking mechanism unscrews from the round unlocking base. This then can be kept in the office and avoid that temptation for students as well. And the way you unlock it really quickly is you just put this green circle up to the unlocking base, click the button, and then they're easy or ready to go and can grab their equipment from there. So, and the last thing too is the medical pouch that I know some of our school partners shared as well. This is for students who maybe have those medical necessities that need that accommodation. It's loud Velcro. So it's very obvious when a student's opening it, but we typically work with schools to still put a designated area for students who need to access it. But it sets the tone that everyone is going to use a Yondr pouch. We just have some that have accommodations for students who might need it. But now I'm going to turn it over to Nina to kind of facilitate the Q&A, but all of our partners feel free to help answer any questions as well.
Yeah, thank you, Jillian, and thank you everybody again for sharing. I know it's been great to work with most of you on your journey, so it's great to see all the fruits of your labor, and I appreciate you sharing kind of the good, the bad, the ugly. Like it takes work, and I think that is something to recognize. You know, it's not just handing out pouches and thinking that, oh, the students are going to comply right away. So it is building the tone. I loved Katie and Aaron sharing how some of the policy essentially has kind of morphed over the years, and getting students to realize this is part of our culture, this is what we do. A big thing that we talk about at implementation is that parent piece, the parents on the front end of getting the buy-in. So I know, especially working with Dearborn Heights too, all of the communication that went out and all of the ways that we make sure that stakeholders know what's coming. The worst thing is to have a parent that's like, oh, I didn't hear about it. So how do we use things like Parent Square? How do you use sending a letter home, as well as putting stuff up on your website? So I think a lot of that stuff of that parent buy-in is really a big part. And every school that I've worked with, that bite is always way, or the bark is always way worse than the bite. Because I think there is this, oh man, this is a culture change and shift, which we realize, but then it's really letting the parents know the why behind it. And then ensuring in the case of an emergency, we have X, Y, and Z set up. Students will be able to contact you if that means coming down to the office. Our schools have phones inside of each of those classrooms, but really it is just making sure we get the why out there and then just answering those questions up front. And then on the back end, when you do need to have a parent come in, I loved how Aaron talked about those conversations with parents, of like hey, we do care about your child. This is a great time to connect. We don't want to see you in here again for a phone violation, but we want to have you on our side where things that are done at home are mimicked at school, and that communication is open in there. So I just want to open it up if there are any questions. I realize for the sake of time, we only have about 3 minutes. So feel free to drop your questions in, or I'm not seeing any, but if anybody has any to put in there, I think again, the big pieces are if you are thinking about doing Yondr, you've heard these testimonials from these three amazing schools, and always talking about the big piece of talking to your staff, talking to those stakeholders, because we want to make sure that the message is loud and clear. And that, again, it does take work. It takes some heavy lifting. But then, getting through year one is the hardest. So you're seeing Dearborn Heights right now, that is in year one, but already hearing about those louder, those louder hallways and classrooms, and engaging time at lunches that students are playing Uno. That has been a phenomenon in all of my schools. Is Uno is the next big thing. So if you don't have Uno in your schools, go get that. Watch how life-changing that can be to introduce a simple color number game. But are there any questions? I will pause here and open it up to just make sure I'm not taking up any extra time here.
I'll actually ask one. Just I'm gonna kind of with my parent hat on. I'm curious. I'll open it up to anybody. Have you found any other kind of unintended benefits, I will say, or like that you've heard from parents about this movement? So, for example, I know someone mentioned that we're seeing kids or families feel less pressure to get kids a cell phone because everyone has them and they use them all day, right? Like that would be one that I would never have crossed my mind as a parent to be like, oh man, I don't have to worry about getting my child a phone so fast. Or I imagine, and I'm sure you all hear this, like how do you mentioned it, parents wanting being able to get a hold of their kid for, oh, you got to ride the bus now, or oh, you're staying after, or you're going with so and so, and like do you ever hear anything back like, hey, we have to communicate and do a better job as a family planning out what's going on, knowing that I'm not going to be able to get a hold of you every day at lunchtime or at this time to say, go do this, go do that. Myself, personally, I have a kind of an anxious middle schooler who has a severe food allergy, and my wife or I, one of us get a text every day. Oh, this happened. This person had this, and they touched, like, what do I do? And trying to teach him how to advocate for himself and how to handle these situations. So, like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, he's going to have to learn to figure this out because he's not going to be able to text me or his mom every single day. And so, like, I'm just curious if you have heard any feedback from parents on some of these other unintended benefits that we might get from this phone-free journey.
So Ryan, I'll just jump in. It's not related specifically to your question, but I talked to a parent the other day that was having issues with their little one. And we have those locking bases out in front of both of our high school and our middle school. We have duplicates. We have two of them so that the kids, we too tell them to lock them before they go and come back. So I'm talking to this parent and we're talking about the Yondr pouches. And I said, you do realize if your child's being, I use the word turkey bird, but being, not being a good child at home, that you can use the Yondr pouches at home. She said, what? I said, you bet. You can have that kid take the cell phone, put it in the thing, lock it. Maybe it's on a Saturday. Maybe if the student's well behaved, then Sunday morning you can just drive them up and unlock it. She said, that is a wonderful idea, and I will take you up on that. So not specifically related, but an example of how you can partner with parents with the Yondr pouches.
We
Awesome.
also had many parents that, especially that first year, were like, could we use this in the evening and just have them lock it up, at 8:30 or 9 o'clock? And then when they come into school, you can just check. They don't even have to unlock it when they come through the doors. They're like, that's absolutely up to you. So it did become a tool for some of our parents. And many parents, when the kids broke the rules, helped them with like rules in school, like they had their phone. We had many parents that said, I'll be up next week. They don't need their phone for the next week.
I think it helps kids find a person at your school too. We've had a lot of kids, the same type of deal. Parents would be like, they're not bugging me all day with texts or whatever. And a lot of times, like, I'm guilty of it. You read a text and you're like, my son's 20 now. And so he'll send something. I'm like, and you're busy working. And so you get it. And you're like, is he really serious? Is he like dying or what's going on? Like you call him, it's not even that big of a deal. And so like a lot of parents will react to that and they'll come up. No parents have come up. Like they'll call and say, can you check on my kid, or email, like, you check on my kid, like they had a rough morning. But kids will have like a person now. And, I sent a weekly email out to parents, and part of it was, who's your person in school? And so it's been cool to see, like, this is my person and why. And like they're developing more and more relationships inside of school with an adult, and they have those conversations. So that's been super cool to see. So that's an added benefit, because a lot of times you can say good morning, whatever, and they're facing their phone. And I'm big and loud. So I'm like, oh, good morning to you too, blah, blah, blah. And so now it's like they're actually having a conversation with you, which is kind of nice. So.
And I will say one thing that we learned is that there are a lot of students that they are actually getting inundated with texts from their parents. And so it does feel like a good relief for them sometimes to have a break. So sometimes I think we're always thinking about, well, how is this affecting the student with them being able to communicate with their parent? But sometimes we also have those students that say, it's much easier for me to concentrate because my parent isn't texting me all day long. And so it's giving everybody a nice little break, which then does lead to much more fruitful conversations when they get home. And this is where we can now catch up about the day. So I know when I was younger, it was always, we had to share one thing that we did in school around that dinner table. And so now I think it is kind of getting back to, as parents, we do have to be planful. We have to think about what our day looks like before and after school. And I think it has been beneficial for both sides. And I really appreciate hearing from all the schools sharing too what they've experienced as far as that parent piece, because that is big. Those are also great big stakeholders in this game.
Thank you so much, Nina. I know we're at time now, so if you guys have questions, don't worry. We're always here to help support. And I'm just gonna talk about that. This whole presentation is also going to be in a cell phone toolkit that we've been working with MASSP on, and that's coming very soon. And then just some next steps. I wanted to leave this right before I pass it back to Ryan, just that you have the opportunity to jot down Courtney and I's information in case you do still have any lingering questions or you want to talk about what this could look like at your school. And I'll also drop a link in our chat as well in case you wanted to book some time with your team and someone from our Yondr team to talk more about what this would look like at your school. But with that, I just want to thank all of our Yondr partners. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's so powerful always hearing from some of the Yondr partners to really share that experience of what it's like firsthand. And thanks to all of my Yondr colleagues as well for joining as well. But with that, I will pass it back over to Ryan. I know he has a few last announcements.
Thank you. And again, remember, you will get a copy of the slide deck and this recording. So just let you know about some additional webinars, online opportunities coming up. You can see over the next couple of weeks, we have additional webinars, some legal webinars, one with our Associate Director of Government Relations, Bob Kepskin, on understanding the rate on school aid. Another legal one, you can find all these by going to massp.com/events. We also have a really unique conference coming up called Catalyst, where we will talk, it's me kind of an AI themed conference. We will be talking acceptable use. So kind of tying in some things with smart devices and AI, but it's really meant to bring a team of students and administrators and educators together to Lansing to talk about really kind of an action plan you can put together as a team, including student voices in exploring AI practices and action plans. So I think otherwise that was it for me. So appreciate everybody's time. Thank you to our Yondr friends and all of our school leaders for being with us today. We'll get all this info out to you in the next couple of days. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.